Hello friends, in this video we'll be taking a look at the autosomal DNA results, predicted phenotype traits, and GD match results of 4 globular amphora individuals from southern Poland who lived in the late Neolithic. Let's begin with the video. We're gonna begin with Grace. This is what she looked like. She's got hazel color eyes, snub-shaped nose, and black hair. So there's a little bit of a deviation from the prediction that was given to her by Weissek. Weissek predicted her to have blue eyes, as you could see. In reality, her eye color is hazel. She has blue eye haplotype 1 and 2 and 3, but does not have blue eye haplotype 4, which doesn't really need to. The BH1 plus 2 plus 3 is kind of the whole package when it comes to blue eye color. But despite this, despite having this genotype, she actually has hazel eyes because of her genotype in SLC 45A2. She's predicted to have straight, followed by wavy, followed by curly, and last place come kinky hair. And her eye shape prediction is that she has Middle Eastern or African or Estonian eye shape in that order. She actually has 2 derived variants in this IRF4 variation. That's super rare in modern Europeans. I highlighted it in red. It's very common in European hunter-gatherers. In fact, almost every European hunter-gatherer had it, but modern Europeans don't really have it all that much. And it leads to blue eyes, red hair, and pale skin. Now we're moving on to Spencer. This is what Spencer looks like. He's got blue eyes, snub-shaped nose, and blonde hair. The eye shape prediction for him is Middle Eastern, followed by African, followed by Estonian, and the hair shape prediction for him is straight, followed by wavy, followed by curly, last place come kinky. He actually also has 2 hunter-gatherer blue eye plus red hair plus pale skin variants in IRF4, and I noticed that a lot of these globular amphora individuals have these derived variants in IRF4, and mind you, not all of them, because there's a couple globular amphora individuals I've seen that did not have this IRF4 mutation, but like a lot of them have this mutation, much more frequent among them than it is among even Irish people today. And Irish people are the modern group of humans who have the highest frequency of the derived variants in this IRF4 variation. So he also has blue eye haplotype 1 and 2. His blue eye haplotype 3 status is undetermined, and he does not have blue eye haplotype 4. Now we're moving on to Eugene. Eugene has got hazel eyes or blue eyes with a neighbor center, snub-shaped nose, and brown hair. His hair texture is straight. His eye shape is seemingly Estonian or Middle Eastern, basically quite Northern European in terms of morphology. And he has blue eye haplotype 1 and 2, and he does not have blue eye haplotype 3 and 4. He has white skin based on his genotypes in SLC 45A2 and ASEEB. And what's interesting about him actually is that he also has, just as all the other individuals this video is about, he also has 2 derived variants in the IRF4 variation that has to do with blue eyes and red hair and pale skin. It's not every globular amphora. You might get the impression that every globular amphora individual has 2 derived variants here. No, it's only the people this video is about for some reason. He does not have any derived variants in MC1R, so no ginger gene. Now we're moving on to Andrea. You might have noticed that Andrea doesn't have a genotype for the main IRF4 variation that has to do with, blue eyes, pale skin, and red hair. That's because he's not genotyped for it. It's simply not in the file, so we don't know what his genotype there is. He's got green color eyes or blue color eyes, but green come a little bit higher, 31% versus 27%. He's got Greek-shaped nose, and he's got blonde hair. He has blue eye haplotype 1 and 2, does not have blue eye haplotype 3 or 4. And he's got lighter traits, lighter skin color, hair color, everything based on his genotype in SLC 45A2, TIRP1, KITL-G, and IRF4. However, one of the KITL-G variants, you can see the one on top, RS642742, he has no light color variant, no light alleles there. And this is a pretty important variation for skin color, so him having 0 light color variants there would probably contribute to him having slightly darker skin tone than what's typical for like the average modern Northern European. Probably like maybe beige or olive skin for him instead of the pale white skin that's typical for Nordic people today. He has 2 derived variants in all the SLC 24A4 variations that my NOSHACOT looks for. So he's got lighter eye color based on that, higher odds of green eyes relative to blue eyes with a neighbor center. And this is why he's predicted to have green eyes at 31% and blue eyes with a neighbor center at only 10%. That contributed major time to his result, and he does not have any derived variants in MC1R, no ginger genes. Now we'll be taking a look at their GD match results. I'm going to show you Grace's results because Grace's file is the highest in quality. They all score pretty much the same thing as Grace, so she's kind of a representative for all these 4 individuals. This is what Grace is scoring with MDLPK11 Modern. As you can see, she's scoring mostly Neolithic and European hunter-gatherer components here. And with the Oracle for this calculator, she's getting modeled as a mixture of LBK, which is early European farmer, plus Scandinavian Neolithic, or Stuttgart plus various Mesolithic hunter-gatherers. Once again, you can see line number 4, Stuttgart plus Lesklausiau. I don't know how to pronounce that, but basically it's a mixture of European Neolithic farmer and European hunter-gatherer. This is what she scores with Eugene's K13. As you can see, she's scoring some North Atlantic and Baltic, which are the components that she got from European hunter-gatherer admixture. However, the majority components here are Mediterranean components. If you add up the West Med plus the East Med plus the Red Sea, those are all her Mediterranean components. She's closest to Southwest French with the Oracle here, followed by Spanish from Cantabria and Andalusia in the very south of Spain, and she's actually getting more or less a mixture of Southwest French plus Sardinian or Basque plus Sardinian. A very typical result for these globular amphora individuals. This is what she scores with PON-DNA LK10 Ancient. As you can see, it's a pretty even split between the ENF and the European hunter-gatherer components here. ENF here does not represent Anatolian Neolithic farmers. It represents something a lot more southern because it actually peaks in like Bedouins and people of the like Gulf Arabs, basically. She's closest to Sardinians with the Oracle here, and she's getting more as a mixture of Sardinian plus Basque, or she's a little bit more northern than Sardinians are. You can see she's actually getting more as a mixture of Sardinian plus something more northern, such as Basque or Estonian. And this is what she scores with PON-DNA LK12. Once again, 32% European hunter-gatherer admixture is a little bit higher than what's typical for Sardinians today, actually quite a lot higher. And with the Oracle, because of that, Sardinians are nowhere close to her. You can see she's closest to French from the south of France and Basques and Spanish. Sardinians are not all that close to her because of the large amount of European hunter-gatherer admixture that she has, which they don't. And she's getting more or less a mixture of Basque plus Bedouin, or basically a Basque plus some kind of Middle Eastern. This is what she scores with HT Regi K6. Once again, this is a pretty typical result for globular amphora. Don't get surprised by the high amount of West European hunter-gatherer in the result here. And with the Oracle, it's a pretty sensible Oracle, a pretty normal result for a globular amphora individual. Basically 77% European Neolithic farmer plus 23% Scandinavian hunter-gatherer, a mixture of roughly 3/4 European farmer plus 1/4 Scandinavian hunter-gatherer is what all 4 of these individuals are. And this is what Grace scores with Gedrosia K3. As you can see, very West Eurasian result. You know what I found very interesting about these results is that European Neolithic farmers from elsewhere tend to score 100% West Eurasian, whereas globular amphora people tend to score West Eurasian plus a little bit of Sub-Saharan African, like 2 or 3%. Now we'll be looking at trait predictor for Grace. We're going to start with Grace. Grace has AA in Combs-Valmet variation, meaning MET-MET genotype. Basically Warrior genotype, much more dopamine, slower breakdown of dopamine, less COMT enzyme activity. It's a very stereotypically European genotype to have as well, and it leads to better attention, better performance and attention and motivation related tasks, and worse stress resilience. She has GG in MAOA's RS6323, so this is the opposite here. This leads to higher MAOA activity, and MAOA, just like COMT, is an enzyme that breaks down dopamine, so having less of the COMT activity means you would have slower breakdown of dopamine, whereas having more of the MAOA enzyme activity means you'd have quicker breakdown of dopamine. So these two genotypes, they kind of counteract each other. She's got GG here in DRD2, which is basically a typical genotype for most humans and slightly lower risk of schizophrenia and nicotine dependence. Nothing too interesting here. What about this? Oh, okay, so she's got TC genotype here, which leads to long form 5-HT-TLPR and significantly lower risk of depression. Finally, I found somebody with long form 5-HT-TLPR. Just like myself, I have long form 5-HT-TLPR as well. It's a super European, like it's a super incredibly stereotypically European trait to have, and in fact even most Europeans don't have it. So it's very interesting that I found a person with long form 5-HT-TLPR here. She does not carry European lactose persistence mutation. By the way, I didn't talk about what that is. So basically long form 5-HT-TLPR kind of protects you from depression a little bit, whereas short form you get some issues with serotonin transportation and slightly higher odds of depression. Most people have short form. So she does not have European lactose persistence mutation. She has GG here and OXTR, which means 2 variants for higher levels of empathy. CC here, which means 7-fold decrease in risk of type 1 diabetes, does not have type 1 diabetes. For type 2 diabetes, well, none of these SNPs are particularly important. It's the importance comes when you put them all together and when you look at the whole polygenic risk score. So we're going to look at that in a couple minutes. She has GG here for hemochromatosis, does not carry the C282Y hemochromatosis mutation. For Alzheimer's, she has got TC genotype here, which means one APOE2 allele. Okay, so she does have APOE2 alleles, and APOE2 alleles are responsible for a great increase in the risk of Alzheimer's. I'm predicting that she's going to have a very high risk score for Alzheimer's here. She actually also has G allele here, which leads to a lower risk of myopia and slightly better eyesight. Once again, it's a super European allele to have, the G allele here. And it does protect from myopia, or like nearsightedness where you need to wear glasses, for example, like me. So she does not have micro P, no micro P. And I can't pronounce that because here on YouTube they are not too friendly when it comes to any kind of PG-13 talk, and I can't get monetized if I talk about this. Two fat gene variants in FTOs, RS9939609, much higher odds of obesity and sleep apnea. Yeah, that's right, sleep apnea actually has a lot to do with obesity. If you're obese, you have a higher odds of sleep apnea. It's kind of crazy. Sleep apnea is when like you like when you try to sleep, when you go to sleep, and you just stop breathing in your sleep. You be sleeping, and then for a couple minutes you just kind of stop breathing, and then you wake up with like headaches, and you wake up not feeling too good. You wake up like you haven't got enough sleep. Thankfully I don't have it, but I have an uncle who has sleep apnea. And yes, he is obese. So for albinism and atypical traits panel, she does not have any of the albinism mutations. Now we're going to check her polygenic risk scores, and we'll be done with Grace. So for polygenic risk scores, she's got much lower odds of schizophrenia than average, basically 1/3 the average odds. She's got a slightly higher odds of diabetes than average, and she's got 2.3 times the average odds of Alzheimer's. So Alzheimer's, something like 10% of people, something like 10% of elderly people end up developing Alzheimer's. So having a 2.367 times the average odds of Alzheimer's means there's a 23% chance that she would develop Alzheimer's by the time she was like 60. So that's pretty much all there is for Grace. Now we're moving on to Spencer. So Spencer also has AA in Combs-Valmet variation. Once again, a MET-MET genotype here, which, I mean, it's pretty stereotypically European, and I'm starting to get the idea because from the amount of globular amphora individuals I've done so far, I'm seeing a lot of AAs here. I'm seeing a lot of MET alleles in Combs-Valmet variation. So I'm guessing that it's pretty stereotypical for these globular amphora individuals to be warriors and have greater dopamine levels, slower dopamine reuptake, less COMT enzyme activity. It seems to be like a pattern with these samples at this point. I've done like 10 samples or like 12, I don't know. I've done a lot. So there is a pattern here. GG in TAC1 of DRD2, so does not have any A1 alleles in DRD2's TAC1 variation. Slightly higher number of dopamine D2 receptor sites in the brain, and slightly lower risk of ADHD and alcoholism. Actually slightly lower compared to the average, compared to the A1 allele, compared to having the A1 allele. It's a much lower risk of ADHD and alcoholism, which is good, right? We don't want to have ADHD and alcoholism. Those aren't desirable qualities. Not genotyped for 5-HTTLPR. No variants for European lactose persistence, and AA in aspiration of OXTR, which means 2 variants for sociopathy, 2 variants for reduced OXTR expression. Very interesting stuff here. CC genotype here, which means 7-fold decrease in the risk of type 1 diabetes, does not have type 1 diabetes. For Alzheimer's, no APOE2 alleles, and this one is not genotyped here, slightly decreased risk of Alzheimer's too. So for Alzheimer's, I'm predicting that the score is going to be pretty low, like it's going to be below 1. In terms of the polygenic risk score. For myopia, does not have the G allele here, which would protect against myopia or nearsightedness, the stereotypically European allele. No micro P, you know what micro P is, I'm not going to spell that out for you. Significantly more likely to gain weight if taken Zyprexa, and it looks like not a carrier of any of the albinism mutations, also not a carrier of the Melanesian blonde hair variants. Now we're going to check polygenic risk scores for Spencer, and for Spencer the polygenic risk scores are as such. He's got 1/4, basically very low odds of schizophrenia, 4 times less than what's typical for the average person, very low odds of schizophrenia, slightly above average odds of diabetes, and as I've said, I said it would be below 1, right? So it's about half the odds of Alzheimer's. It's very low odds of Alzheimer's, incredibly low odds of schizophrenia, and just slightly above average odds of diabetes for Spencer. Now we'll be moving on to Eugene. So for Eugene's file, there's a little bit less to talk about here. So for Eugene's file, he's not genotyped for the Combs-Valmet variation, he's not genotyped for the MAOA one, not genotyped for Profenitin Pro or TAC1. So we're just gonna have to go with whatever is in the file. We're gonna have to look at this and this and this. So he's got CC genotype in this variation of DRD1, which is implicated in lower odds of autism and tobacco addiction. I actually don't know what DRD1, what dopamine receptor D1, what dopamine in general has anything to do with autism, but I guess it does. There is a link there. Of course, it does have to do with tobacco addiction, but like what's the angle of dopamine affecting autism in any way? I don't understand this. CC genotype in this variation of DRD3, which is a rare genotype implicated in higher odds of OCD and intellectual disability. AA genotype in this variation of DRD3, which is mostly a Eurasian genotype and increased the risk of autism and autistic personality traits. Once again, I fail to understand the link between autistic or personality traits or any of this with dopamine. I don't understand how dopamine has anything to do with autism, but apparently it does. Explain to me in the comments if you have an idea. AA genotype here in DRD4, which is implicated in higher likelihood of schizophrenia, and short form 5-HT-TLPR, higher odds of depression. So this is Eugene, right? Eugene does not have long form 5-HT-TLPR like Grace did. For the empathy gene, TT genotype here, which means lower levels of empathy, but the main variation we really want to look at for here is this one, and he's not genotyped for this one. For diabetes, once again, CC here, which means 7-fold decrease in the risk of type 1 diabetes relative to the opposite genotype. Not relative to the average. The average person actually scores CC here, but relative to the opposite genotype, it's a 7-fold decrease. So basically, the opposite genotype, if you have the opposite genotype of CC, I think it's TT here. I don't remember the polymorphism. Is it CA or is it CT? It's one of those. If you have basically either the A or the T, I forget which one it is. If you have the opposite allele of C, you have a 7-fold increase in the risk of type 1 diabetes. That's how you should read these results. Not a carrier for C282Y hemochromatosis mutation, and no risk alleles for Alzheimer's in APOE. Okay, for myopia, does not have the G allele here, which would protect against myopia, so does not have the allele that protects against myopia. No micro P once again, and you know what micro P is. I'm not going to pronounce the whole thing for you, but maybe pause and read it. No mental retardation variants in MYBPC2. Yeah, I don't even remember adding this variation here to my file, to my program. So, not a carrier of any of the albinism mutations, and also not a carrier of Melanesian blonde hair variants. Now let's check his polygenic risk scores. And for polygenic risk scores, this is what he is getting. He is scoring 2 times the average odds of schizophrenia, so basically slightly higher odds of schizophrenia than what's typical for the average Northern European. Pretty much average odds of diabetes, type 2 diabetes, not type 1, type 2 diabetes, and pretty much below average, actually very significantly below average, 1/3 the odds of Alzheimer's than what's typical for the average person. So I think this is it for, who is this? Now we're moving on to Andrea. So Andrea has got TT in MAOA's RS6323, warrior genotype. So it seems that all of them are warriors. The ones that are genotype for anything tend to be warriors here. He also has AA genotype in TAC1, which is very, very surprising, right? It's not a typical genotype for humans at all. The A1 allele or the A allele here basically decreases the availability of dopamine due to receptor sites by like 20 or 40%. I don't remember, is it? I think it's 20% for every A allele. So if you have one A allele, it's minus 20. If you have 2 A alleles, like this individual, it's minus 40. But either way, it's a very crazy decrease in the availability of dopamine due to receptor sites in the brain. And you would guess it increases the likelihood of alcoholism, Parkinson's, ADHD, various other illnesses. And this is not a human genotype at all. Not a typical human genotype, I should say, at all. If you look at like gorillas, chimpanzees, orangutans, various monkeys, they all have AA genotype here. And some humans do as well, but for humans, the most common allele is G here. So this is not a typical genotype for humans, but it is a default genotype for any non-human. Or at least any ape or monkey. TT here in DRD1, which is a typical genotype associated with slightly higher odds of autism and tobacco addiction. Once again, I don't know how autism has anything to do with dopamine. And TT here, which is associated with slightly lower risk of OCD and intellectual disability. That's in DRD3. and TT in this variation of DRD4, which is a typical genotype, once again associated with lower odds of intellectual disability and ADHD. I'm not sure what dopamine has anything to do with intellectual disability. I don't know the angle here. And short form 5-HT-TLPR, typical genotype for most humans. So for lactose persistence, does not have any derived variants for European lactose persistence. Nothing surprising here. I don't think any of these, well, I don't know, but I don't think any of these Globular Amphora people had any European lactose persistence mutations. I'm not sure. I haven't done all of them, but so far I don't think I've seen any. For diabetes, AA genotype here, which means significant increase in risk of type 1 diabetes. So this individual, the odds of type 1 diabetes for this individual is much higher than average. However, type 1 diabetes is super rare. It's like 1%. It's less than 1% or something. So, 7 times 1%, what is it? It's still 7%. It's still not definite. I can't say for sure that this individual has type 1 diabetes just from this genotype, type 1 diabetes just from this genotype here. Not enough. This is not enough to say. And he's got AA genotype in this HFE variation, which is super crazy, right? So he has two variants for the C282Y hemochromatosis mutation and likely has hemochromatosis. This is super rare, and it's most common in Europeans, actually. Hemochromatosis is called, colloquially, it is known as the Celtic curse, because it is most common in Northwest Europeans, such as like Scottish people, Irish people. I actually have the hemochromatosis variants too, but not these two. I have hemochromatosis variants here, the H63D2 variants. No, the H63D variants, yeah. So I don't have the C282Y, I have the H63D variants. But this individual has the rarer, that C282Y is actually less common than the H63D. So he's got two variants, not one, two variants for this hemochromatosis mutation, and likely has hemochromatosis. I think that's pretty big. It's a pretty big information to drop, right? Because hemochromatosis is not a common condition, and it does lead to very severe consequences for the health. It also tends to impact men more than women. So this is Andrea. So Andrea is a man. So this would definitely impact him in terms of his health. For Alzheimer's, does not carry any risk alleles for Alzheimer's in APOE. And we don't really care about this. We're gonna see the results when we get to the polygenic risk scores page. For miscellaneous section, CC genotype here, which means better performing muscles, likely sprinter rather than endurance athlete. And once again, two fat gene variants in FTOs, RS99, 39609, much higher odds of obesity and sleep apnea. No MYBPC2 mental retardation variants, not mentally. I don't know if I can say that actually on YouTube. Can I say the R word on YouTube? I don't think I should. Okay. And not a carrier for 1-beta-tyrosinase negative ocutaneous albinism, not albino, but he does have this atypical genotype here, which leads to 7-fold increased risk of cleft lip. However, if he had cleft lip, it would probably be apparent from the skeleton. Like you can tell, you can look at the skeleton and you can tell the palate abnormalities. So I don't think this individual really had cleft lip. He just has this genotype that makes it more likely. We're gonna check polygenic risk scores. And for polygenic risk scores, Andrea is below average for schizophrenia, actually 2 times less than the average score for schizophrenia, slightly above average for diabetes. I think all of them were slightly above average for diabetes, for type 2 diabetes, and below average for Alzheimer's. So pretty much, typical average score, nothing too crazy in these results. This was Andrea, and this is the last of these 4 samples. I've officially done all of them. I haven't done every Globular Amphora so far. There's still more Globular Amphora for me to do. But so if you enjoyed this video, please do leave a like and subscribe and share as well. It would really help me grow my channel here and maybe make a little bit more money from what I do, because it is a lot of work. I'm investing a lot of time, and I would like to make a little bit more money from this activity here. Thanks for watching my video until the end. Goodbye, guys.